I still remember the moment I stepped onto the plane that day, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. This wasn't just any trip, it was a big step for me, an important business meeting that could change everything. Walking into the first-class cabin felt like stepping into a different world. Plush seats, soft lighting, quiet whispers of luxury all around. I settled into my seat, letting myself soak in the moment for just a second. Finally, I was here. Finally, I had made it. As I glanced around, I noticed the other passengers, some reading, some chatting softly. Then, my eyes landed on the man sitting nearby, a middle-aged white man with an expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something in the way he looked at me that made my skin tighten, not curiosity or kindness, but judgment. I caught a sharp, dismissive glance, just as he muttered under his breath, loud enough for me to hear, "Shouldn't be sitting here." The words hit me like a cold wave, unexpected and brutal. In that moment, my heart sank just a little. Hurt flickered inside me, sharp and confusing. How could someone be so quick to judge, just by looking? I held my breath, trying to keep calm. I told myself not to react, to stay composed. But inside, the disbelief was strong. How could this man think he had the right to decide where I belonged? I wasn't the only one who noticed. Around us, a few passengers shifted uncomfortably, casting sideways glances. The tension was thick, hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. No one said a word, but the silence spoke volumes. I could feel the weight of their eyes, some sympathetic, others unsure what to do. That was the moment I knew this flight wouldn't be ordinary. The peaceful luxury of first class suddenly felt like a battlefield, and I was right in the middle of it. The man didn't stop with just that one comment. As the plane taxied down the runway, he leaned a little closer, speaking loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "You know," he said with a sneer, "I don't understand how someone like you ends up here, in first class. Seems like a waste of space." His eyes were cold, full of judgment, like I was some mistake, an intruder in a place I didn't deserve. I felt every eye in the cabin turn toward us. His words echoed in the quiet, sharp and unwelcome. My hands tightened around the armrests, but I kept my voice steady. "I work hard," I said calmly, "just like anyone else here." There was no shame in my tone, only quiet strength. "This seat is mine because I earned it." His laugh was cruel. "Earned it? By what? Charity? I doubt you belong here with the rest of us." He wasn't even trying to hide the stereotypes behind his words. Assumptions about who I was, what I could or couldn't do, wrapped in a sneer. The way he said it made me want to disappear, to vanish into the seat and never come out. But something inside me pushed back against that urge. I thought about all the times I'd faced moments like this before. Times when people assumed I wasn't smart enough, or capable enough, simply because of my skin color. Times when I was ignored, talked over, or worse, openly insulted. It wasn't new, but it never got easier. Over the years, I learned to stand tall, to speak up calmly, and not let their ignorance define me. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for every person who'd been told they don't belong. Around us, the atmosphere thickened. Some passengers looked away, uncomfortable but silent. Others stared openly, eyes wide with shock or disbelief. A woman a few rows back clutched her husband's arm, her face pale. A young man glanced at me with what I hoped was quiet support, though he didn't say a word. It was strange, this mixture of silence and tension, like everyone was waiting to see how far this man would go. A flight attendant came over, her eyes flicking between the two of us. I could tell she was hesitant. She wanted to intervene, but maybe wasn't sure how, or if she had the authority. I appreciated her presence anyway. Sometimes just knowing someone notices makes a difference. But I knew I couldn't rely on anyone else. I had to handle this on my own. The man's insults continued. He questioned my education, my job, even my ability to understand the rules of first class. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" he sneered. "Maybe they made a mistake putting you here." His words were like a slow poison, trying to seep into the confidence I'd worked so hard to build. I took a deep breath. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, I said, voice steady but firm. And I expect the same respect as anyone else on this plane. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was a quiet promise that I wouldn't be pushed down, no matter how hard someone tried. The man scoffed, clearly unimpressed, but then something changed. His sneer faltered for just a second, like he was surprised by my calm. Maybe he thought I'd crumble or lash out. Maybe he didn't expect me to stand up so calmly. I could feel the weight of every eye on us, every heartbeat in the cabin sinking with the tension. The air was thick with unspoken questions. Who was I really? Why was this man acting this way? And what would happen next? For a moment I let myself wonder if the rest of the flight would be filled with this ugliness, or if something else was waiting just around the corner, something that would change everything. The man's face twisted in frustration as he prepared to launch another cutting insult. His eyes burned with the kind of arrogance that thought it owned the room, the plane, maybe even the world. I could see he was gearing up to say something worse, something meant to cut deeper than before. But before he could, I took a deep breath, and spoke clearly, calmly, almost softly. "You don't know who I am," I said. He raised a brow, surprised, as if daring me to explain. "I'm not just some random passenger," I continued. "I'm the founder of one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. I'm on my way to close a deal that could create thousands of jobs. I've been on Forbes lists, spoken at international conferences, and run charities that help underprivileged children. I'm the woman whose work has been recognized around the world." The cabin fell into stunned silence. I could feel dozens of eyes turning toward me, the murmurs starting low and then growing louder. Gasps filled the air like a wave breaking. His mouth opened then closed again, unsure of how to respond. I looked him in the eye. "You insulted me because of how I look, because you assumed I didn't belong here, but that's your problem, not mine." The man's face reddened, his arrogance cracked, replaced by something closer to embarrassment, or maybe even anger at being caught off guard. He sputtered, "I didn't mean." His words stumbled, meaningless under the weight of what I'd just said. Around us passengers whispered to each other. Some nodded subtly, others looked at me with newfound respect. A few shook their heads in disbelief, as if they couldn't believe the man's rudeness had been so blind. It was strange, really. How easy it is to judge someone by a single glance, skin color, style, age, and how hard it can be to see the person behind that first impression. How quickly assumptions form, and how stubborn they are, even in the face of truth. I thought of all the times I'd been underestimated, dismissed because of the color of my skin or my gender. How often people assumed I was less qualified or less capable, and yet here I was, sitting in first class, not by accident, but by sheer will and hard work. The man's face twisted in discomfort. His next words came out defensively. "Well, that doesn't change the fact that you're not." I cut him off. "No, it doesn't change who I am. But it changes your behavior toward me. I deserve respect. Everyone does." He looked around, suddenly aware of the eyes on him, the judgment, the disapproval. His confidence crumbled as he tried to backtrack, but his attempts only made things worse. "I wasn't trying to be rude," he muttered, voice low. "But you were," I said simply. The tension in the cabin rose, thick and heavy. Passengers waited silently, watching the scene unfold like it was the climax of a play. The man's silence was deafening. For a moment I allowed myself to feel the weight of the victory, not over him, but over the assumptions and prejudice that tried to hold me back. The flight attendant glanced at us again, more certain this time that something serious was happening. Passengers shifted in their seats, some giving me small smiles of support, others exchanging glances that said, "Thank you for standing up." I sat back, calm but alert, knowing that this moment was far from over but also knowing I had taken control. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show people the truth behind their assumptions, and watch the world around you change. As the silence settled around us, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. But inside, I wanted to say more, not out of anger, but because there was a story behind me that needed telling. A story about fight, about pain, about rising when everything seemed against me. I wasn't always this confident, I began, my voice steady but soft. There was a time when I was just like anyone else, trying to find my place. Growing up, opportunities weren't handed to me. I worked nights, studied days, faced rejection after rejection. People told me I wouldn't make it, that the world wasn't ready for someone like me, but I kept going. Every setback was a lesson, every insult fuel for the fire inside me. I fought hard to build my company, to create something that could make a difference. I paused, letting my words settle. That's why what you said hurts so deeply, I said, turning slightly to look at the man beside me. Because it's not just about me, it's about every person who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere. You insulted me because you judged me without knowing my story. At that moment, something unexpected happened. One of the passengers near the front, a woman in a sharp business suit, leaned forward and quietly said, "Sir, maybe it's time to check your own story." The man's face tightened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something fragile beneath his harsh exterior. It was as if his arrogance was a mask, and that mask was starting to crack. A young man sitting a few rows back added, "You talk about hard work, but your company was recently involved in a scandal. You've been accused of cutting corners, treating employees unfairly, and dodging responsibilities." The man's face paled. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but the words caught somewhere between anger and shame. It was clear now, his confidence was built on a shaky foundation. His insults weren't born from truth or experience, but from bitterness and insecurity. I looked around at the faces of the passengers, some shocked, some quietly nodding in understanding. Slowly, a few stood up, voices gentle but firm. "Everyone deserves respect," a woman said softly, looking directly at him. "No matter who they are, or where they come from." Another passenger added, "Judging people without knowing them only shows what kind of person you really are." The man's facade crumbled completely. He lowered his gaze, unable to meet the eyes that now looked at him with quiet disappointment and a firm boundary. That's when the flight attendant returned, more confident this time. "Sir, I've been informed about your behavior," she said firmly, but politely. "Harassment of other passengers is not tolerated on this flight. If it continues, we'll have to take further action upon landing." His face drained of color. For the first time he seemed small, humbled, not by me, but by the reality of his own actions. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, not just for myself, but for everyone who had been silent until now. The energy in the cabin shifted. Where there had been tension, now there was something warmer, an unspoken agreement that kindness and respect must come first. A middle-aged man beside me offered a quiet smile and a nod. "You handled that with more grace than most," he said softly. Another passenger leaned over and whispered, "Thank you for standing up. It's not easy, but it matters." I realized then that this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a shared moment of learning and growth for everyone on that plane. Sometimes, standing up to ignorance isn't about confrontation or anger, it's about showing who you truly are, and inviting others to see beyond their assumptions. That day, a man who thought he could belittle me instead revealed his own cracks, and the people around us showed the power of solidarity. The flight continued with a new sense of calm. Passengers exchanged smiles and whispered words of encouragement. I felt proud, not just for my accomplishments, but for the kindness and courage that can emerge even in difficult moments. And in that moment, I knew something important. Respect isn't given because of your title or your success. It's earned by being human, by standing tall in your truth, and demanding dignity for yourself and others. As the plane settled into its steady rhythm, and the hum of engines filled the background, I found myself reflecting on everything that had just happened. The anger, the tension, the silence, and finally, the unexpected moments of kindness and understanding. Prejudice is a heavy burden, one I've carried more times than I care to remember. It's a pain that cuts deep because it's not just about words, it's about feeling unseen, misunderstood, and unfairly judged. The man's insults weren't just about me, They were about the many people who face assumptions every day, based on the color of their skin, their background, or where they come from. But dignity, true dignity, is stronger than those insults. It's not about shouting louder, or proving someone wrong. It's about standing firm in who you are, even when the world tries to put you down. It's about knowing your worth without needing validation from those who refuse to see it. That moment on the plane reminded me just how easily we fall into judging others by appearances. How quickly assumptions form in the mind, based on something as simple as skin color or clothing. But appearances are deceiving. They don't tell the story behind the smile, or the strength behind the quiet confidence. We all have stories of struggle, of triumph, of pain and hope, and yet too often, those stories remain invisible to those who are quick to judge. What gives me hope though, is the change I saw in those passengers. The way a few simple words shifted the energy in the cabin from tension to respect. How people chose to stand with me, not because they knew my name or my success, but because they recognized the basic humanity that connects us all. Change doesn't always come from grand gestures, sometimes it happens in small moments, like a plane full of strangers choosing kindness over judgment, respect over prejudice. Those moments add up. They remind us that progress is possible, even in places where we least expect it. The rest of the flight felt different. Conversations were softer but warmer. People exchanged smiles and nods, as if acknowledging an unspoken bond. I could feel the energy shift from one of division to one of unity, and as we landed, I carried with me a renewed sense of purpose. This experience wasn't just a story of insult and confrontation, it was a reminder of why I keep breaking barriers. Why I fight for respect and equality, not just for myself, but for everyone who's been told they don't belong. I felt stronger because I had stood up, not just against one man's ignorance, but against a system of assumptions and bias that tries to hold people back every day. No matter where you come from, or what people think you're capable of, your worth is never defined by their judgment. And sometimes, standing tall is the most powerful act of all. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced prejudice or witnessed someone standing up for respect? Share your experiences or feelings in the comments below. Together, we can build a community that values kindness, understanding and strength. Thank you so much for listening and being part of this journey. Your support means the world. Don't forget to share this story with others who need to hear it.